If you have ever told someone you do not care what they think and secretly cared enormously, you already understand the central problem this video is about. Not giving a fuck has become a cultural shorthand for a kind of performative indifference, a pose, a way of signaling that you are above the noise, unbothered, too secure to be touched by other people's opinions or life's difficulties. And that version of it is completely useless because it is not what Manson is actually arguing. The title of this book is a deliberate provocation designed to get you to pick it up. What is inside is considerably more precise and considerably more demanding than the attitude the title implies. So let us be exact about what this idea actually means, because the distinction matters more than almost anything else in the series. Not giving a fuck does not mean giving zero fucks about everything. It does not mean indifference. It does not mean detachment. It does not mean building a wall between yourself and the things that matter. Manson's argument is that you cannot not care. Caring is not optional. It is what human beings do by default and by design. The question has never been whether you care. The question is what you are spending that caring on, and whether you chose it deliberately or simply absorbed it from the environment around you without ever stopping to examine it. Here's the reality Manson is pointing at. You have a finite and non-renewable amount of fucks to give across your lifetime. Every single one you spend on something is one you cannot spend on something else. And most people, if they are honest, are spending enormous quantities of their finite supply on things they never consciously chose. Other people's opinions of decisions that do not affect them. Standards of success they inherited rather than selected. Approval from people whose judgment they do not actually respect. The slow accumulation of status signals that look impressive from the outside and feel hollow from the inside. The problem is not that these people care too little. The problem is that they have never made a deliberate decision about what to care about. They are running on defaults, and defaults, as we covered in the Atomic Habits series, are almost never designed with your actual interests in mind. Manson introduces a concept here that is worth sitting with. He calls it the subtle art of not giving a fuck, and the subtlety is exactly the point. It requires you to make a genuine and difficult choice, not to stop caring, but to care about fewer things more deeply and more deliberately. To decide in advance, with honesty and without social pressure, what actually deserves a place on the short list of things that get your real attention and your real emotional energy. Most people never make this decision. They outsource it. They let their environment, their social circle, their industry, their culture, and their algorithm decide what is worth caring about. And then they wonder why they feel simultaneously overwhelmed and vaguely empty. Here is the practical edge of this idea, and it is the part that actually changes behavior. When you have not decided what you genuinely care about, you are vulnerable to caring about everything that presents itself as important. Every criticism, every comparison, every signal that someone else is further ahead. Every piece of content designed to make you feel the gap between where you are and where you should be. When you have decided, clearly and deliberately, what belongs on your short list, those same inputs lose most of their power. Not because you become cold or detached, but because you now have a standard against which to measure them. Does this belong on my list? No. Then it does not get my attention. That is not indifference. That is clarity. And clarity, it turns out, looks a lot like confidence from the outside. What most people read as someone who does not care is usually someone who has decided very carefully what they do care about, and everything else simply does not register in the same way. The action before the next video is a single honest question. Write it down if you need to. What are the 5 things you are currently giving the most emotional energy to? Not the things you think you should care about. The things that are actually taking up space in your head right now. Look at that list. Ask honestly, did I choose these or did they choose me? That question alone will tell you more about where your life is pointing than any goal-setting exercise you have ever done. Episode 3 goes somewhere more uncomfortable. It looks at what happens when the culture tells you your whole life that you are exceptional, and what that does to a person when they eventually have to live in the ordinary world the rest of us inhabit. Subscribe so you do not miss it.